And welcome back. For our third conversation, we are joined by the committee member, Ms. Sharon of the St. George's Key Day Society, here to talk to us, of course, about the Battle of St. George's Key Day and why we should commemorate it different and special every year, and especially this year. Yes. Good morning, Ms. Sharon.
Good morning, Ms. Rock.
Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Belize.
Okay, so we all know about the Battle of St. George's Key. We've heard of it, we grew up with it. But a lot of us don't know exactly what happened on the day. There's a lot of debate about if it lasted 10 days or if it happened at all. Tell us about the history of the battle itself. How did it actually start?
Okay, basically, there were battles before the Battle of St. George's Key.
Okay.
You know, we were settled. We had pirates and buccaneers. We had men who came here to seek their living. They found their livelihood as merchants, trading. Pirates who found opportunity attacking ships, and those who established camps along the Belize River. Our first capital was St. George's Key. Now, what we have that's special about Belize from 1765, right? Yes. We had what I would call a first formal constitution, which was homegrown. It wasn't imposed by Imperial England, but when Burnaby came, he codified or formalized what had been prescribed or written by the settlers in a public meeting as we ruled ourselves. So we were de facto independent. Yeah. Imagine that, before Saint-Domingue in the Caribbean, right? Now, it's amazing. Our history is so beautiful, rich. What we had was, as well, you'll be interested to know that 2 women voted at the public meetings, including to establish Burnaby's Code. So, Belize has always been a gem, special history. Yeah. And you had in the earlier 1700s, attempts had been made to dislodge the settlers in the bay, right? And the settlers composed bay men, you know, say British, Irish, black men, of course, the lifeblood, 75%, mostly slaves, and as well you had free Negroes who, you'll be delighted to know, long before the blacks got votes in so-called first world countries, free people of color voted in our country, Belize, because they had a property qualification. So now word came, of course, vigilance, eternal vigilance. You love your country, so you're always on the lookout. That the Spaniards, and it was Imperial Spain, a big country, who even the British, you know, would be well matched against, was intending to send an armada to dislodge the settlers. Just prior to that, a few years prior, they had come and they had taken about 450 people from the settlement. And they took people of all walks of life, marched them north over the Yucatan, and then east, and they ended up in the dungeons in Cuba. They were released after certain treaties, right? It's important, and I have to try to tell this event quickly, right? Yeah. But first, let me say that the country of Spain, which was defeated in that battle, contributed to the country of Belize account of the history of the Battle of St. George's Key. Now, those who lived to tell the tale, and the first census in Belize come out of St. John's Cathedral, right? Because some children were born in Cuba, right? I understand the name of the dungeon was Finquerique. So by the time the decision came to whether to defend or evacuate Belize, the debate, it was the populist cry of the people, no? Finquerique or Yabra. You know where Yabra there? Belize, right? The burial ground. So they would die as Belizeans, people of the Bay, rather than go through that. So there was a decision made at the public meeting, right? Danger called for rescue, and it was put to the vote. We had high drama. Actually, it is reported, it's in the archives here, the archives of Spain, Mexico, Jamaica, but our local archives and the life and oral history of our people through whose veins it runs, right? Maintain our authentic account. So as before, decision was put whether to defend or evacuate, right?
Yes.
That had been an option sometime before when they would wait until things quietened down. But you had like Thomas Paslow, who was said to be the one who gave that patriotic, strong speech. And he said, basically, a man who is not prepared to defend the country should not reap the benefits, right? We had Thomas Potts, who had been released from Cuba, who was leading that debate to leave. The actual words of what was put to the meeting was can be found in this book, St. George's Key, The Birthplace of a Nation. And it was put together by Nigel and Calada, a more recent account. And then you find Dr. Jaime Awe writing as well, and another person. But basically, what you have was on June the 1st, 1797 at 9 a.m. at the public meeting in Belize town. It was at the courthouse, the mouth of the Belize River. Time doesn't permit me to put all the details, but basically, what happened was that the Spaniards who were coming, it was a whole armada, and it was under captaincy of General Arturo O'Neill, who incidentally was an Irish, but he was with the Spaniards leading the armada, and his second in command was Boca Negra. The settlers said they would stay and defend, but before that, there was deadlock, right?
Yeah.
And I want to get into that because I want people to understand the brevity of the public meeting, because it seems so like this very informal thing. I know that my mom grew up going to public meetings, but nowadays they pretty much don't exist. But tell us about the structure of the public meeting and the significance.
The public meeting was actually a form of an open-air legislative assembly, because these people passed laws, homegrown laws, not imposed from abroad, as I said. So you had constitution making by the people of the Bay. It was better than self-government. It was prescribing their own set of laws. So what you had as a public meeting in Belize, which is historical to Belize and different, is not the public meeting in the populist sense where people go out and, you know, get on the bolirostrum, but you had serious events, all the matters that would be taken, whether it had to do with raising funds, defending the settlement, passing laws for the ruling of the settlement, even for maintaining certain things we do not like, you know, were taken at the public meeting. And what was important in our form of democracy there, right? Belize is referred to in the early books as a country, not just a settlement, right? So you had laws, and they were prescribed in the ways, in the words of the settlers, men who and women who were here to make their livelihood, loved Belize, founded their home. They were opportunistic, but no one can deny that they were united in the love of the Bay of Belize, right? So they call them Keymen, Baymen, people of the Bay. They were making their own laws. So we had independence in this country long before we went back and forth. We reverted to self-government, superintendency, back and forth till we galvanized onto independence.
Now, I think this is key, because oftentimes when people, I don't know if people recognize the uniqueness of Belize and tie it back to some of these historical issues, like why we're an English-speaking country in Latin America. And a lot of it goes back to back to our history. But before we go into that, I want to ask one of the most important questions. Why is there such, I don't want to say ambiguity, it's more, why are there such different versions of this particular event? Why are there people in the country who dispute whether or not it occurred, whether or not it is as significant? Well, and especially as a part of the society, I'm sure it's something you continuously battle.
One of the things I want to say quickly before we forget, I wanted to mention that the decision to stay and defend was carried by the 14 men
from Flowers Bank.
The Flowers Bank 14, who came, led by Adam Flowers, Caesar Flowers, and William Flowers. And they paddled down and they came to the meeting. And there was vote, vigilance, victory, and violence. Basically, the Battle of St. George's Key was always celebrated from it was won and our people were victorious, and has continued to be celebrated by the people. It was more formally celebrated in 1798 at the centenary, when a meeting was held at Riverside Hall on North Front Street, and you had prominent men, aisles, usher, a mixture of people of all walks of life and from various professions and the civil service predecessors, we would call it, whom took a formal decision to make sure they entrench it. As well, cannot not mention Simon Lamb, and he was a populist black man who said to the people, you know what, we have to make sure we step up, right? Not just from private people's celebration to forging this national, what would have been, it was really our September celebrations, the genesis. But naturally, if people win a victory like that,
there's a celebration.
There's a celebration. I don't want to mention any unhappy regime. I don't like to mention anything negative when it comes to our patriotism and our nationalism. Basically, we have independence because we had the Battle of St. George's Key. As the society says, its motto is the St. George's Key Day Society. We are here because they were here. Now, to put it shortly, and to refute and rebuke it and to bury it and to send it back where it came from with many happy returns, or however you want to put it, that reference, the wicked, insidious, evil reference to our historical Battle of St. George's Key as a myth, were words that I would not want to repeat, but they came from the mouth of not our friendly neighbor to the north, but the person who was in front of a regime to the west. You understand what I mean? So, you see, the Battle of St. George's Key is very strong in our history. And if somebody has an unfounded claim to your country, right, what do? They understand that the people of Belize have an indomitable spirit. When we get disciplined, when we get together, when we unite in common love of our country, history tells everybody who cares to listen and to read and to go to the historical accounts. You notice I started on the positive by saying the country Spain, the Empire of Spain, which had its armada defeated, contributed back to the people of Belize some years ago. History of their defeat in the Battle of St. George's Key. I said too that Captain Arturo O'Neill's, they didn't have diaries. They had a handwritten manuscript. Back then when you go to war, as now, you have your historian writing. So I think it was Molina Solis or Solis Molina, one of the, in a history of the Yucatan, they wrote, and they have the original, which is transcribed from the Spanish original account by Captain Arturo O'Neill's historian on board his armada, that they got defeated in the Battle of St. George's Keys. Your program is, oh yeah, open your eyes. Belizeans, open your eyes, open your brains, maintain your valor and vigilance. When anybody wants to take you, they will attack your history.
And that is why there is a society for St. George's Key Day, to keep the history alive, to keep on talking about it. And I always feel that it is unfortunate that we should have to dispute history, or even but we have a responsibility to continuously pass it on to our younger generations. And as accurately as possible. Last year they had the special symposium with archives that they got from Mexico, and so it had parts of the Spanish accounts as well. Now I want to ask what the society does to ensure that the younger generations who are coming up are fully aware and cognizant of the significance of the battle, and that slowly we start to have a united recognition as to what it has meant for history.
Well, what the society does, I happen to be the chairperson for a span of maybe 8 years, but we encourage new blood to come in, younger and younger people. We carry on the work of the Committee of 40, which was in the 70s, and they got their name from the original Committee of 40, which was determined at that public meeting in 1798 from the centenary celebrations. With respect to the actual work, it has been one of having a mandate and commitment, right? So you have the groundswell, because it's a process that is a lifelong commitment. So for example, when you asked Ms. Cowie about national and unity, it was always key, and I maintain that we should always remain a part of the National September Celebrations Committee. And as such, we hold it out that we must teach, we must participate in that as a national forum, and with the national responsibility, and saying to the government, whoever is the government of the day, that this is your mandate, you owe it to the people, and we are volunteers who will help you carry this history forward. With respect to the teaching of the children, it has to do with their participation and the program of activities. We try to maintain the tradition of the day, as well as understand that through newer media or mediums, the children get engaged. So that if we have an event, right, or we participate in an event, for example, Monday night they had the evening of patriotic songs at Wesley Methodist Church. You had children involved. Spontaneously, a 90-year-old lady, Miss Alice Thompson, before it was programmed in the event, when she heard, I think it was Mr. Peter's Boom and Chime Band. Imagine you have two left foot boom and chime in a way, block down in a way, go back to just like Calypso to the Caribbean, the settlement. So that is a strong force. You don't have to talk about it. That 90-year-old teenager got up and she was marching to the 10th of September, and then she had great-grandchildren, and one of them got up, right? Incidentally, the child was born aboard, a diaspora child, but she got up, and so the fever pitch catches on. In addition, we have a lot of books and history, and we have been saying what we must use is electronic media. You don't need to print the old-fashioned way, but still, I'm saying if I have a book and the author permit me, especially the older books which are in the public domain, I don't keep a lot of things for myself, and if somebody wants a copy, take this copy. Do me one favor though, make 2 copies, right? Give me one back and give one to a school, or one to a child, or one to a parent, or a teacher, or a leader. So you have electronic media, right? You can actually put, when Nigel and Kalada and the others had a presentation about the coat of arms and the original men shoulder to shoulder, BDF is outside, and where we got that from the Battle of St. George's Key, and how 2 black men, because the black men had to fight, and it propelled emancipation. It's a very exciting history. So you have electronic media, you have the internet now, you can use it as a vehicle to present in the format. So instead of other things getting in the minds of your children, you have competition with all kind of things. Put the positive history, and I want to say, there's no stronger tonic for the people, the children of the institution, right? Their strength, they bolster their connection to Belize, right? And we have a duty to let them hold on. When Samuel Haynes wrote, "This heritage hold," it wasn't just to rhyme with "nature has blessed you with wealth untold." I think that's the mandate. Our children have to be our heritage holders.
And I think that's our issue today. Not that the history isn't rich and it isn't relevant. It's just how we get the younger, youth just interested. And I think that's where we have that's where we fail, because they aren't interested because it's history, and we aren't keeping up with the times on how to really pass on that information. So how do you encourage schools and our government and public sector departments to really transform the way that we pass on this information? I mean, A new demonstration doesn't mean a new definition of what you're sharing. So how do you encourage that?
I will say that I have to take the recommendation of National Hero Philip Stanley Wilberforce Golson and air it to the people of Belize. He had a position that we should maintain a department of patriotism because he saw what was happening, how our history was being diluted and eroded, and that our young people have a lot of other things which call for their attention. You know, the attention span of young people in a good way, and they don't write on slates or with pens so much, but instant coffee, instant, you know, internet and the attention span. But as a country, I believe we have a responsibility to maintain a department of patriotism, so from the top, right?
Yeah.
Now, in environmental arena, they say tops down, bottom up, inverted hierarchy, nested hierarchy approach. What it means, you just don't put it from the top and
it has to be
down.
both.
You have to, it has to be from the community as well, right? So when you get into the schools, no, the teachers, children spend the most time with teachers, and then in the home, the parents, children mimic, right? They can learn 5 languages, they can learn what they want to learn. Children are quick, they are smart, they are talented. So it seems to me it's the example that we set, right? And there's a churchman, Monroe, I think, or from Bahamas, who said you can't have success without a successor. So what we need to do is to forge this. You, Miss Rock, you, Marlene, you are like, I'm not that whatever, but you're like closer connected to the younger generation, right? So we have to make sure that the baton, no, by your asking the questions, right? You're putting it out, you have gone to the crux of it, right? There was a time when the children participated in the 10th of September parade, as they do now in the Independence Day parade with pride, no? And I am of the view that the children should be in the parade, right? Be at the patriotic events, right? And although people have always been given to revelry and people naturally want to dance, but you can feed your children. This is good for their consumption, right? It's not just good for their consumption, it's good for the survival of the country of Belize as we know it. As our people made sacrifices, that is the mandate we have, no? And through the history and forging that link, right? Our children can read, you know? They love to read. Children love history, you know, when it's put in an exciting way. For example, I did history at school. I didn't learn a lot of this history in school, right? I didn't understand a lot, right? When I had history one time, a history teacher at high school said, they came, he saw, he conquered. And I'm like, who came, who saw, who conquered? He spoke about Columbus, not as Belize. He didn't conquer here, thank God. But with history, right? When you talk about Stephen Johnson, the Battle of St. George's Key, a black man. When you talk about the Flowers Bank 14 and you had dugout dories and canoes which could hold so many men, right? When you talk about the engagement at the Battle of St. George's, when you speak about Captain Marcy C. Captain, you know, I could excite children here, you know. The settlers on the Barrow, you had Fort Balcar, they were expecting a landward invasion, right? So there were preparations at the Hullover and Government House in Belize, Rogues Point and so on, right? But the Spaniards said, okay, we will set them up, right? The imperial invaders would be invaders. And they decided, you know what? Barrow was sent, the British sent reinforcement, the warship Merlin, you had Tiklat, Towser, Teaser, mermaids on private sloops. And guess what? Gun flats, right? The slaves in their flat bottom boats, you discount and say, why flat bottom boats? We had home turf advantage, the shoals, the channels and so on. So the armada came overladen, they miscalculated. So now what you had, this landward expedition is expected, right? People thought the person commanding was well prepared on land. They had discipline, they had martial law, they had vigilance, They made sacrifice, the so-called unruly bunch. They, after the public meeting at courthouse, I must say this, the leaders went to Igbo Town. Tell the young person where is Igbo Town. Right next to Wesley Church, started at South Street and went to Yarborough. And they got the black people to agree, and the slaves by extension. So what you had now, Captain Moss, right? Brilliant sea captain. He was at St. George's Key and they were prepared. Remember, the settlement was at St. George's Key, the seat of government, the parliament, the public meeting. So it was thought that Captain Moss loved to snorkel, but he was out there. He was checking the shoals, sounding the channels, preparing boys, decoys, and so on. Actually, when it was found out, you know the word kraal, and this is how we could tell children things in the Creole, right? Kraal comes from the word corral, and turtle was a food store. So it was a turtle fisherman, and when you look at the map of St. George, you see they had the turtle corral, or the kraal as Creole said, to keep in the turtles. That was food store. So this turtle fisherman was out there amongst others on the lookout. And from July, he saw certain things, which 1798, which he reported. You know what? I see them coming at sea. Not to be tricked, Captain Moss, when the alarm was really raised, he was at the ready. So that disease, yellow fever, breakdown in leadership, you come in with an armada and you have English Channel, English Key, you have the reef, I mean, even the protective barrier, the natural defense, and the brains and valiance and the patience of our people won that battle skills and strategy. When you read the history, you know, see how detailed it is, right?
And there's a lot more available now than it used to be. We're completely out of time, but I want to ask you, obviously, the establishment or the existence of the society allows people, teachers, whether it's a community group, the opportunity to access the expertise and the knowledge that you have on the history. How do people get in touch with you? Perhaps they want a presentation at a school or wherever.
Belize is small, right? They
or the society, that is.
You can get in touch with me. I'm listed in the phone books.
Okay.
You have other members of the society who, by extension, I can mention. You have Miss Engleton, who is now the chairperson. You have Mrs. Geraldine Tillett. She's an educator, I think, in retirement. You have other people who have been there for a very long time. Mr. Eric Neal, he's very much connected to, I think, St. Ignatius. And you have a host of others, right?
Yeah.
And as well, through National Institute for Culture and History, we are interlinked in that we have the common interest in Belize, right? You have the Belize Historical Society under the able leadership of Dr. Abigail McKay. You have Mr. Francis Humphreys, who has written about the Battle of St. George's Key, and he was a student at Wesley College, you know, and he went over to Yarborough. If you go to Yarborough right now, you'll see Thomas Paslow tomb. Next to it, Clarissa Paslow, you know, Paslow Falls and Paslow Falls in Kaya, the black woman, the Irishman, married. You could start the thing by saying, you know what, to the children, pull out one $5 bill before you buy that $1 chicken or $5 chicken. Look pan the back of it. What that picture pan it? That the one tomb when they put coffin pan that pa. That's a sarcophagus, and it's of Thomas Potts, who, although he was for evacuation, stayed and was a part of the defense, right? So our history is told in ways that can excite our young people. Art competitions, debate, writing, poetry, you know.
And I think you've definitely highlighted how there's so many elements to the story that can be relatable to children. We hope that people do get in touch. Of course, we are completely out of time with this segment, and we appreciate you stopping in to be able to give us a brief synopsis. We know there's a lot more information to get into on the Battle of St. George's Key. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and happy 10th and happy Independence.
Thank you. The same to you.
It's hip hip hooray season. Met we hold strong, 219th anniversary of the Battle of St. George's Key, and we galvanize our independence, right? From that to that, and we move on as a people and nation, right?
That's
United.
right. We're going to go ahead now and take our final break. And when we come back, we'll have our wrap up. So stay tuned.